Can we kick off with the COVID restrictions issue, as Vince was just talking about? I mean, there's concern from some that maybe this is a bit fast and loose, but actually people are ready for this, aren't they? They're ready to get those freedoms back properly.
Well, I think everyone wants to get back to some kind of sense of normality, absolutely. But of course, what we don't want to do is take unnecessary risks and discover that somewhere down the line we're back to where we started. And I think that's why there is a lot of concern about, the scaling back of testing, possibly ending testing. How on earth are we going to track what's happening if we do that? And of course, we seem to have stopped listening to the science.
It's interesting, as Sir Vince Cable was saying, that we haven't seen, certainly not in high-profile ways, we haven't seen the medical professionals talking. We've just seen the politicians. Are you worried that this is a political move rather than a scientific one, then?
Well, your guess is as good as mine, but, for months, Patrick Vallance and Professor Whitty were dominating our screens, giving us advice and warnings, and all of a sudden he seemed to have disappeared. I'm not quite sure what that means, but it does seem as if the decisions are now all political, and I'm hoping that we aren't ignoring the science altogether.
But there is a sense of treating it, isn't there, as though... I mean, you keep talking about the flu, because, that can be very nasty and it can be fatal, of course. But, if you're ill, stay at home, stay off work, and if you're not feeling ill, go in. There are some figures out that say, despite the massive number of infections we saw over winter, the winter deaths remained in line with what we would normally see.
Well, of course, I'm a Birmingham MP, and we still have pretty high death rates here. And I think, if I'm right, the current projection is still for around 7,000 deaths a year. I'm not sure if that's a tolerable figure or not. I'm inclined to say it isn't.
To be fair, without looking it up on Google straight away, but the flu death figure has got to be something like that.
Yes, but that's on top of 150,000 people who've already been killed by COVID. Look, as I say to you, everyone would like to get back to normal. I understand that, but it's not that long ago that you were interviewing people about new variants and potential additional risks. And I'm just slightly surprised that all of a sudden someone is able to say, that's it, we've decided it's over.
On to another subject that I'm sure your constituents have been on to you about, and that's the cost of living crisis. What would you do to ease their worries? What would a Labour government do that would make things better?
Well, some of this stuff, I'd be the first to admit, I think is probably beyond the government, but some of it could have been anticipated. The problem with HGV drivers, which was well known, has added to the cost of certain items in the shops. That the government could have anticipated that, and it could have taken steps to address that much earlier. So that's obviously led to a rise in prices. There could have been better preparation in terms of gas storage to make sure that we were better prepared for that. Obviously, the issue about the proliferation of small energy companies has meant that there's been far greater pressure as they've gone bust, and that's added to the cost for certain customers. And there's a very clear measure that we could cut VAT, as the Prime Minister said he would do, and we could use some of the oil and gas company record profits to offset the current prices that customers are facing. Instead, the government's answer is to force a loan on people, whether they want it or not.
What about the green levy? It's 25% or thereabouts of a bill. Now, look, I don't think anyone would seriously argue scrapping it all together, but certainly a significant reduction or a suspension for 12 months could make a lot of difference to a lot of people.
Well, it would certainly suit certain people in the Conservative Party. I've heard that argument. Actually, I think the truth is you need a much more comprehensive energy policy. So you need to plan better for the transition to green energy. As I say, I think you have to improve the storage facilities.
I mean, we're hitting it. Although you do need to look at long-term strategy, of course you do. The problem with all this is people need an immediate fix.
Yeah, and as I said, Labour has offered a rather obvious immediate fix in terms of VAT and oil and gas profits. But, you know, we're not in power. We haven't been in power for the last 12 years. The Conservatives have, and they are the people who've presided over this crisis and who don't have a long-term plan and don't have a short-term plan.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. Actually, before I let you go, and this is cheeky because it might be silly, but obviously we can hear you're a Scot. I was just wondering what your feelings are about Team GB curlers.
My feelings about?
The curling teams, Team GB in the Winter Olympics. They're our only medalists. We got a silver and a gold.
Yeah, well, you know, it's always the case that you have to rely us to pull the irons out of the fire, isn't it?
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, we're very proud of you. Thank you.